Welcome to Greek for a Week. We are looking at a few more verses here in chapter 4 of the book of First Thessalonians. So we're going to look at verses 7 and 8, which if you look below that will be inside of the paragraph chapter 4, verses 1 through 8. So next week, I want to take the opportunity to diagram the entire passage, verses 1 through 8. I think verses 1 through 8 not only is an entire paragraph, but you'll notice, if you want to pull out your Greek text now, you'll notice in verse 9, that begins with a peri de. And so typically when Paul uses peri, the preposition peri and the conjunction de, when he uses them together, he oftentimes changes the conversation, but yet still talks about a related topic. So I think verses 9 and following, basically 9 through 12, I think that is another paragraph. So that's why I have put the break there at verse 8. So here we're going to look at verses 7 and 8, and you'll notice that there's a gar at the beginning of verse 7. So I'm suggesting that you have a third reason as to why Paul is exhorting and encouraging the Thessalonians to walk and to please God. You have a gar in verse 2, you have a gar in verse 3, and now you have one in verse 7. So we're going to translate. He says, "For God has not called us for the purpose of impurity, but in sanctification. Therefore, the one who rejects this rejects not man, but God, who gives His Holy Spirit to us." So again, I have already mentioned the gar. This is the conjunction that relates I'm going to suggest verse 7 to verses 1 through 7. And then let me jump down to verse 8 here. Here's the toi garun. That's a conjunction that Paul has coined, that he's put together as an inference from an argument. So I'm suggesting that verse 8 is kind of the capstone. It's the here is the concluding remark of verses 1 through 7. Let me jump back. So now we have called. Here we have called, and that is third person singular, aorist active indicative of kaleo. Then I went ahead and I translated epi for the purpose of. Epi and then plus the dative here, so I'm indicating that as purpose. Then you have another conjunction here, ala, which is indicating a strong contrast. He's not called us for the purpose of impurity, but what he has called us to is sanctification. Then again, I've already mentioned the toi gar un here, so the inference of verses 1 through 7 is verse 8. The ha atheton, this is a present active participle, singular nominative masculine of atheteo, substantival participle, the one who. Then you have just the verbal form athete here, which is your third person singular, present active indicative. And then you have, lastly, again, you have another ala. Let me bring that up. So you have another conjunction here that's bringing a strong contrast. You're not rejecting man, but who you are rejecting is you're rejecting God, ton theon. And then here, attributive participle, the ton didanta, that's attributing a quality to God, and that attributive quality is the one who gives. It's a present active participle, singular, accusative masculine of didomi. So that's the attributive participle, again, attributing equality to God. Then it's his spirit here, and then you have here to us, to us or for us. Excuse me, to you or for you. So that's likely purpose, or maybe even goal. So we continually have the Spirit working in our behalf, so that we are not rejecting God who has given us his Spirit. So there you go. There's verses 1 through 8 that took a few weeks to get through. I want to diagram verses 1 through 8 next week, which, just to give you a heads up, I'm only going to have one main point, because the GAR clauses in 2, 3, and 7 will give me the 3 reasons why he's exhorting us to walk and to please God. So trust that you have a good week. We'll see you next week for the diagram.